Sydney Harbour. Some say the finest harbour in the world, and it's easy to see why. Working harbour, commuter corridor, playground. Sydney Harbour is a natural wonder which captivates and inspires locals and visitors alike. You find the history of Sydney in the bays and headlands of the harbour, its coves, inlets and islands. The history of long Indigenous habitation and the history of European settlement since the late 18th century. Throughout the 19th century and at times during the 20th, the headlands of the harbour were fortified to defend the city. And over that time, industry, wharves, shipbuilding yards and suburban settlements spread along the foreshores. A number of these places were off limits to the public, some of them for almost 150 years. Military, industrial and other sites that tell us a great deal about the way Sydney developed. The Sydney Harbour Federation Trust. Sights unseen. 7 major sites on or near the foreshores of Sydney Harbour are now being returned to the people through the work of the Sydney Harbour Federation Trust. The Harbour Trust, an initiative of the federal government, has been established to prepare and implement a plan for the future uses of these special places, to weave them back into the life of the city, to protect, conserve and interpret their social, cultural, environmental and Indigenous heritage. The sites now under the management of the Harbour Trust are Macquarie Light Station near South Head, the former Marine Biological Station at Camp Cove, the former North Head Artillery School, defence facilities at Middle Head, Georges Heights and Chowder Bay, Woolwich Dock and Parklands, Snapper Island, and the largest island in Sydney Harbour, Cockatoo Island. In consultation with the community, the Harbour Trust is working to create a lasting legacy for the people of Sydney and Australia. Macquarie Light Station sits above the sandstone cliffs of South Head, overlooking the Pacific Ocean. Built in 1881, this landmark remains Australia's longest operating navigational light. It still guides ships to the entrance of Sydney Harbour at night. The Harbour Trust regularly opens the lighthouse to the public so that people may experience its history and enjoy the spectacular city and ocean views from the top of the tower. Further along South Head, in the tranquil setting of Camp Cove, is the former Marine Biological Station. Built in 1881 for the Russian scientist Nikolai McCluho-McCly as a base to study Australian marine biology, this colonial timber house was later used for over 100 years as Army officers' married quarters. The house is listed on the Register of the National Estate, and the Harbour Trust plans to restore the residence and grounds. North Head is the gateway to Sydney Harbour and a natural icon of the city. Remote and beautiful, much of North Head is part of Sydney Harbour National Park. But atop this island-like oasis, adjoining the National Park, is the former School of Artillery. This strong military presence dates from the 1930s, when North Head was fortified in the period leading up to the Second World War. The school ceased operations in 1998, but the magnificent parade ground and the collection of Art Deco buildings and fortifications remain as echoes of the past. They are surrounded by pristine bushland, home to precious native flora and endangered fauna, including the long-nosed bandicoot and little penguin. The remoteness of this site has created a unique ecosystem in the heart of Sydney, with stunning views to match. The Harbour Trust plans to preserve the military and ceremonial heritage of North Head, while at the same time devising future uses that are compatible with the headland's environmental significance. Middle Head is one of the major green headlands of Sydney Harbour and has played a part in the defence of Sydney from as early as 1801. The Army built barracks on the headland during the Second World War, and it was later the base for the Military Intelligence Unit. Neighbouring Georges Heights was occupied by the Army for 130 years. It was the ideal location from which to protect Sydney, with cannons placed strategically to fire on enemy ships as they entered the harbour. Chowder Bay was home to military facilities from the 1890s, first as a base for the Submarine Miners Corps between 1892 and 1922. It then became a depot and barracks for Army engineers, and in the 1970s, the Army Maritime School was located here. Planning by the Harbour Trust for the creation of a headland park on these former defence sites will provide all Australians with a place of beauty, solace and respite. It may also be a place to explain the Indigenous history of the Sydney region. On the western side of the Harbour Bridge lies Woolwich Dock, at the meeting of the Parramatta and Lane Cove rivers, known to Aboriginal people as Mukubula. Excavation of the dock into solid sandstone took 6 years and was completed in 1901. The dock was used for the repair and fitting out of large ships. By 1918, it had been lengthened to 260 metres, and it operated commercially until the 1950s. In 1963, the Army purchased the site for its water-based transport operations and remained there for over 30 years. Woolwich Dock is a fine example of the patterns that have shaped Sydney Harbour. Maritime industrial activity interspersed with bushland and residential uses. The Harbour Trust plans to create a maritime village at Woolwich Dock, combining the use of existing facilities for maritime, community and commercial activities. Across the water from Woolwich lies Snapper Island. Once a public reserve and storage facility for the nearby Cockatoo Island dockyard, Snapper Island for many years was a training depot for naval cadets. Greatly altered from its original state, today the island is home to a collection of naval artefacts and memorabilia. The Harbour Trust plans to repair and conserve the naval heritage of this picturesque island. Cockatoo Island, the largest island in Sydney Harbour. It has a remarkable history, from convict prison, industrial school and reformatory, to major dockyard for shipbuilding and repair. The prison, guardhouse and courtyard exist today, as does evidence of over 150 years of a thriving maritime industry. Immense industrial workshops, a powerhouse, cranes, water towers, rail tracks and tunnels, and 2 magnificent docks. At its busiest during the First World War, Cockatoo had over 4,000 people working on the island. It is a showcase of the past and a place of enormous potential for the future. The Harbour Trust plans to halt the deterioration of the island's buildings and deal with contaminated areas and industrial hazards. In short, to revitalise the island as a working maritime facility and a landmark harbour attraction.
Right, ladies and gentlemen, this is the Fitzroy Dock.
These unique sites are gradually being opened to the public. Events and open days have attracted large numbers of people, as have the construction of walking tracks and the introduction of guided tours. There is a sense of pride and ownership in these special places as the people of Sydney and elsewhere learn more about them. The Harbour Trust is consulting widely with the community on how best to conserve the heritage of these public lands and how best to make use of them now and into the future. As they become more and more part of the beauty, life and diversity of Sydney Harbour, local communities, the people of Sydney and all Australians will benefit.